Of all of the Jedi Masters living around the time of the Republic Classic era, Qui-Gon Jinn was perhaps one of the only ones that truly understood the way of the living Force. The Jedi by now had truly lost their way, they only didn't know it yet. The realization that the Jedi weren't who they were supposed to be wouldn't come until deep into the Clone Wars, when it was far too late for the Order to be saved. But perhaps this wasn't too late. Perhaps Qui-Gon Jinn could have been the person to turn it all around, a golden opportunity. A seat on the High Council for Qui-Gon Jinn would have made a massive difference. Qui-Gon, in fact, was one of the only people at the time that could have saved the Jedi Order, if not the only one. Of any Jedi at the time that deserved a seat, it was Qui-Gon Jinn above anybody else. Yet, when he got the opportunity, it would be none other than Grandmaster Yoda who stood in his way. In the canon novel Master and Apprentice, this takes place several years prior to the events of the Phantom Menace. The High Council would approach Qui-Gon with an invitation to join them with a seat on the council, but not every master was enthusiastic about this decision, and Grandmaster Yoda was one of them. In fact, he was the primary master who actively pushed against Qui-Gon to be allowed on the council. So in today's video, let's discuss exactly why Yoda tried to keep Qui-Gon Jinn off the High Council, and how it may have been a detriment to all of them. Master and Apprentice greatly focuses on the relationship between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and how their time together had been rocky since the very beginning. Obi-Wan was more of a stickler for the rules and the Jedi way, whereas Qui-Gon was more along the lines of trusting in the Force and feeling out what to do at any given time. Kenobi served the Jedi, Qui-Gon served the Force. Kenobi was one of the Jedi who were inspired by the High Council and believed that their ruling and decisions were always the best option. And of course, in direct opposition to Obi-Wan's beliefs, Qui-Gon was not a fan of the Council and frequently butted heads with them over their rulings. This hostility is why it came as such a shock when Qui-Gon was granted an invitation to join them and a seat on the Council. The entire time that the meeting was happening with Qui-Gon though, several of the Masters were endorsing Qui-Gon Jinn. While Windu admitted that their relationship with Qui-Gon had been difficult in the past, they had some time to talk it over, and believed that a fresh perspective would be a healthy one for the Council. I would like to take a moment to point out that this was one of the only times in recent memory that the Council made a ruling that was actually wise. While Qui-Gon was certainly a maverick and constantly broke the rules of both the Jedi and the actual law, he always did it because he was certain it was the shortest path towards acting towards the will of the Force. Qui-Gon religiously believed that the Jedi are those that are gifted with the ability to feel the Force, and that they are conduits of its will, and should be acting arm of the Force itself, not the Jedi Order. While the Council may not agree with Qui-Gon's methods, this invitation proves that at least at the time, they acknowledged and appreciated the philosophy behind how Qui-Gon conducted himself. Qui-Gon's opinion would be in opposition to what the Council typically would have chosen on any given matter, but that was the entire point. This was one of the final moments of profound humility and wisdom shown by the High Council that was crumbling, and yet, of all of the wise and humble masters, Yoda was not among the group. During the meeting where this was explained to Qui-Gon, Yoda was noticeably quiet and very outright grumpy. He had a sour look on his face and didn't contribute much to the conversation, at least until after the meeting was concluded. As a gesture of goodwill, Qui-Gon decided to talk to the old master, admitting that he had definitely had their differences with him, but that he always respected Yoda and was looking to a new chapter. Yoda, though, had none of this. The Grand Master very bluntly told Qui-Gon that he did not want him on the Council at all, and believed that the other Council members were making a mistake by extending this invitation. In a rare time, Yoda had been outvoted. Yoda even goes on to reveal that he was overruled by a majority vote on the matter and the invitation was extended. This didn't really faze Qui-Gon at all though, surprisingly, as he didn't take it personally or the views of Yoda. In fact, just like Dooku, Qui-Gon believed that Yoda was a big problem, even though it was never outright said. In response to this, Qui-Gon said that he needed to take some time and meditate. He was very unsure whether he wanted to join the Council since he would give up Obi-Wan as an apprentice, and secondly, he was struggling with the knowledge that being a part of the Council was an incredible honor and opportunity, while at the same time, knowing much of the Council was just bickers. And Qui-Gon had a sneaking suspicion that what he said and his voice would not be heard very often at all. believing he could do more good away from the Council. While Qui-Gon said this was a moment of clarity, he did not know if it would last. While all of the Council members seemed genuine, there was definitely an underlying feeling of contempt, as though they were just smiling through their teeth at Qui-Gon Jinn. Several of the Council did not want Qui-Gon there, but Yoda was the vocal representative of those few. Qui-Gon in some way appreciated how blunt Yoda had been, stating that he was blatantly against the invitation. What's truly shocking about this though, is why would Yoda deny the apprentice of his apprentice a seat on the High Council? When he was a Jedi, Dooku was well trusted by Yoda, and of course Dooku trusted Qui-Gon with his very life. But it seems that Yoda didn't feel the same way about Qui-Gon, and believed that his rash actions had simply gone too far for him to be trusted, costing the Council much. We have to remember that this was pre-Clone Wars Yoda, who was still completely stuck in the old ways. His dogmatic views of the Jedi were still firmly in place, and this would not be broken down until the Order itself crumbled. By the end of the novel, based on his experiences, Qui-Gon Jinn decides not to take a seat on the Jedi Council. And while it was his own choice, it really was a shame that Yoda had discouraged him and not wanted to actively grant him a seat. But Qui-Gon Jinn's story is eerily similar to another one. Another individual that was also extended a seat, but was known not to be welcome on the Council. Hundreds of years in the past, after the events of the Jedi Civil War, Revan had been redeemed and managed to defeat the Sith Lord Malak. In the 2 years that followed, Revan would be recognized as a hero, and the Jedi Council allowed him to marry Bastila as thanks for his service. At the time, some members of the Jedi Council believed that Revan could offer them something that no other Jedi could. Revan had experienced both sides of the Force to its extent, and although some called him a rogue, others held deep respect and reverence for him. His new wife Bastila encouraged Revan to join the Council, but Revan ultimately declined, and although he had many ideas, such as realizing the true power of the light and the fact that it came from love, he knew that his voice was not going to be heard on the Council whatsoever. Revan did not need the Force to sense just how disingenuous the invitation was. He knew it was ceremony, and to placate him if anything else. While Qui-Gon's situation was not as extreme, it's still understandable to see why Qui-Gon was thinking along the same lines that Revan had. The Council was set in its ways, and despite Yoda being the one to openly reject him, Qui-Gon could still feel the sigh of relief when he declined the offer. In the end though, Qui-Gon would have the last laugh, as he made sure that his dying wish was in direct opposition to what the Council wanted, for Obi-Wan to train the young slave boy from Tatooine. At the end of The Phantom Menace, we do know of the full conversation that Yoda and Obi-Wan had, where Yoda vehemently disagrees with Qui-Gon's wish. But what's fascinating to me is how Yoda and Qui-Gon had all of this opposition, but when Qui-Gon passed through the Force, Yoda was the first one that he reached out to. Not only that, Yoda was the only one at the time that Qui-Gon trusted with the knowledge of life after death. And after the Purge, Yoda would have a conversation with the ghost of Qui-Gon, one where the Grand Master humbled himself and proclaimed that he would become Qui-Gon's Padawan so he could learn the technique of becoming a Force ghost, finally understanding Qui-Gon Jinn entirely. These kind of character moments and changes in relationships is why we love Yoda's character and his arc over the course of the Clone Wars in the original trilogy. He too is learning and can admit when he is wrong. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Yoda outright disliking Qui-Gon Jinn and believing he was too dangerous to join the Jedi Council? Thank you as always for watching, my friends, and may the Force be with you.